Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm excited to get to know all of you. My name is Leanne Mallory. I'm the founder of Leading in Motion and the instigator of the Corporate Dance Maven movement. I'll tell you a bit more about who I am in a moment, but I'd like to see who's in the room. So if you are live on the line right now, I'd love to hear from you. Why don't you give us a quick chat and just say hello and let us know your name and who you are. As we're waiting for a few people to still join us as well. If you're on the line and if you're able, give us a quick chat. All right, well, I am waiting to see if folks who are here are able to chat. If you're having trouble, I just want to make sure our technology is up and running. Great. Well, let me try one more thing. So I'm happy to keep talking, but I know that there are quite a few of you on the line still, and I'm hoping to hear from you as well. Oh, hey there, look, I'm here and I'm typing. Kai Roberts Fu, good to see you. Good. Okay, so it seems like we're working. If you are on the line, I'm going to put out just a quick poll to give us a sense of who is here. So very quickly, if you can see this, just want to get a sense of where you're dialing in from. So if you're able to access the poll and you're able to check a box, I know we have folks who are part of this movement from all over the world, all over the country in the US, as well as all over the world. So if you're able to participate and you're able to click a link, let us know where you're calling in from. Beautiful. I'm viewing from YouTube, screen not showing up via the link. Uh-oh, okay. I wonder if folks are having some technical troubles. Thanks for the update. Let's see. All right, so Rohi and Kai, I see your comments. Is anybody else on the line and having trouble? So let me know. You're here, you're having trouble. Oh, I am getting a poll response. Good. Okay, so it seems like our technology is up and running. Sometimes these things take a moment. So about half of us calling from the East Coast of the US, some folks possibly calling in from Europe or the UK, some folks calling in from the West Coast of the US. Welcome, everyone. And if you're able, again, still trying to work out technology here, but if you're able, give us a quick chat of who you are, what's your name, anybody else who's on the line. Cool. Well, while we're waiting for those to come in, I'm going to put up one more poll. So once again, I'm excited to get to know you all. I know we're all kind of getting on the line, still sorting things out here. I am really looking forward to sharing some things with you and also to learning some things from you as we get to know one another. I'm excited about the fact that we have folks of all different kinds who seem to be interested in this movement, as well as folks from all around the world. I will go ahead and actually put up another quick poll just to see, again, who else is on the line. Let me see what else I can put up here. So I'm also curious about what your line of work is. So if you can reply to the poll and then anything that you want to add in addition, again, via the chat. I know that we have some folks here who are either dancers or professional dancers, dance teachers, folks from the conscious dance movement, folks who are more somatics practitioners or somatic therapists, folks who may be coaches, trainers, as well as people who may be internal doing HR or people development work in organizations. So once again, if you're able to see the chat, to access the chat, give us a quick update of who you are and what you do in the world. Great. Well, while we're waiting on those responses to come in, I'm going to say a little bit about what we're here for. So once again, this is the Corporate Dance Maven, the second webinar that we're doing in our series. And the title of the webinar is Entering the Arena, 7 Proven Ways to Dance in the Door. And 7 because that's how many that I was able to come up with quickly that I knew that I could speak to, and proven because they're all different things that I have actually done to teach dance and sell the work of dance or embodiment training in the context of the corporate space. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. So like I said, my name is Leanne Mallory. I'm the founder and CEO of a business called Leading in Motion, which is where I do my corporate facing work from. And I'm also a person who has spoken not long ago at the Design for Dance conference, as well as Wisdom 2.0 and a few other organizations that are really trying to bring mindfulness, trying to bring movement, trying to bring embodiment into the workplace context. And in that, I really got inspired about how many people there were who were really interested, who were doing great embodiment work, who were dancers or dance teachers, who had anywhere from a couple of years to 20, 30, even 40 years of experience doing embodiment work, and really curious about, well, what would that look like if we brought that work into the corporate context? It's something that I've been interested in for a long time. And I realized that there's more of a tribe of people who are either doing this work or want to do this work than I had initially suspected. So if you were on the line, I suspect that you're one of those people in some number of different ways. Again, perhaps you're someone who's never done a thing in the corporate space, but you do teach dance and you do feel like you have some embodied skills that the corporate world could benefit from. It might be that you're someone who's been kind of working in both spaces, but not necessarily tying that work together, or someone who's simply an internal in an organization doing some great training and other kind of people development work, but would really be curious about how dance or movement could make a difference for that. So whoever you are, I'm really excited that you're here. I know I'm starting to see some of the responses from the poll, so I'll give you a sense of what I'm seeing here. On the line, we have some conscious dance teachers, some folks who are identifying as movement or somatic therapists, other embodiment practitioners. I also see we have someone at least who's recognizing themselves as an other. And now I'm also seeing your hellos come through on the chat. Fantastic. And I'm afraid I'm not going to pronounce your name right. Agnesia, calling from the UK, teaching dance, facilitate body, mind, spirit events, and offer coaching services. Video producer at conventions and events, dance instructor, professional Argentine tango dancer. Hi, welcome. Jacob Mooney, founder of Lightbox Culture House in Portland, Oregon, performer, dancer, and somatic therapist. Beautiful personal dance and primitive body rewilding work. Okay, great. Now I can see you. Now I can feel you. I'm really excited about who's here. I was also really touched by the comments that came through in terms of your needs and your desires and where you're at in your work and what are your biggest challenges doing this work. So we'll leave the chat for a moment. And Kimberly Elliott is here, a NIA teacher. Hi, Kimberly, I know you. So some folks I've never met, some folks that I know are on the line. I'm also really excited to connect you all with one another. So as this work continues, I'm going to be continuing to look for ways to make you all available to each other, to share ideas, to swap notes, and so on. So what I want to do today is a little different than what we did in the last webinar, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the last webinar, I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of good info on sort of the A to Z of how you actually build and offer a corporate dance program. Today, I really wanted to give a bunch of different options and ideas of how one can start to do this work, and how specifically in terms of like, what is the thing that the folks in the corporate space might need enough or want enough to say yes to. Either, again, if you're an internal, to say yes to letting you try to do it, given the opportunity to make it possible. But then if you're an external, really to say yes to pay you to do this work and to invite you in to do this work. And to kick us off, like I said, these are things that I've done over the course of my career in the last 10 years. I want to say a few words about how I got here. And partly I want to do that just to introduce myself, but partly because I suspect that we all may share similarities in our stories in different ways. So I personally was a technical dancer as a child. I grew up in a family where movement and embodiment was much what we were doing. My mom ran a movement-oriented business where she taught young people, and I eventually, when I was in my teens, started teaching young people movement skills as well. But I was also really interested in particularly ballet and modern dance, and I started, I think, taking ballet when I was about 2. And when I was about 17, had an opportunity to go dance with the Youngstown Ballet, which I wasn't able to say yes to, in part because our family didn't have a ton of money or a ton of extra time to make that dream possible for me. And so it kind of felt like this moment of, okay, well, I can't be a real dancer, so what else am I going to do? And at that time, I didn't stop dancing entirely, but I really put my dreams and my love of movement on the back burner. And I went to get a real job. And I had no idea what that meant at the time because I really just knew that I loved to dance. But a real job that I could imagine was to be an architect because my father's father had been an architect, and that seemed like a really respectable thing to do. So I decided to go to college and go to school for architecture. And I got about one half of a year into it and decided that I didn't like doing that at all. That decision culminated, but with a final project that was torn up and thrown away by the janitor the day before my final exam. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. This architecture thing, I don't think that's really what I'm built for. But in the pursuit of all of that, found myself into moving into the field of psychology, human development, and really getting curious about what makes people tick. And so I got excited about the possibility of studying that, learning that, and somehow crafting that into a career, which on one level, the thing that, again, seemed respectable was to go study it, to teach it, and perhaps to become an academic. So I'm like, great, I can be a professor. But I also kind of had this hobby on the side that unfolded while I was in school, which was I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad, and they had a lot of things like dialogue facilitation and, intercultural leadership seminar type, events and opportunities that we could do over spring break and whatnot. And I realized that what I loved more than anything was being in the room with people who were having a transformational experience of some kind. And that if I could facilitate that for a living, well, that would be really fun. And I would really like to do that. And at the time, it didn't have much to do with embodiment per se, but it certainly had to do with getting to know who we are as human beings and how that could actually ignite us in a different way or enliven us in a different way. And so fast forward, I found myself a few years later working in the Bay Area at a boutique consulting and training firm, corporate facing. We were a small company, so I can't say, I worked in a large corporation, but all of our clients were large corporations, including places like NASA and Shell Oil and Capital One and M&T Bank and LexisNexis. So we had these very big contract kinds of gigs. And what I got to see in doing that work is that while there was a lot of internal leadership training being made available to leaders in these organizations, like they had a lot of stuff already in place where they were learning, here's what you do to be a good leader. They weren't very good at actually embodying the work in general across the board. So one of my roles was actually to gather 360 feedback by doing interviews with people who knew a certain leader. And it was like this ongoing theme of, they know they need to do this, but they're not walking the talk. They have this thing they need to grow into or live into in this way, but they're not so much walking the talk. Around the same time, I was also, again, like living in the Bay Area and started to get exposed to the conscious dance movement, as well as some trainers who were doing somatics in the context of leadership. So I bumped into Nia Technique. Later, I bumped into the practice 5 Rhythms, as well as Dancing Freedom. And I also bumped into Richard Strozzi Heckler, the founder of the Strozzi Institute School of Embodied Leadership in Petaluma, California, who really was weaving together martial arts-based embodiment practices with pretty deep level leadership transformation. And what I realized when I met these people and when I met these practices is that I started to make more sense to myself. It was like, oh, I thought somehow I was going to have to choose between being a dancer or a person who really lived and moved from the body and who was very interested in the body's wisdom, with being a person who did corporate work or business or got things done in this other kind of more technical and more masculine way. And it was kind of like this weaving between the feminine and the masculine inside of me that opened the possibility that these things could actually go hand in hand. And not only could they, but actually that it would be really good for everyone if they did. And so the soapbox that I've been on for the last couple of years is it would be really good for the folks in the business world who I know, who I work with, who I love, and who I coach to have more access to the wisdom of their bodies through dance, through embodiment, through somatics, or through other practices for the sake of better leadership and also a deeper connection to purpose. There's something that happens that we become more alive, right, when we're tapped into our bodies and we're really much more aware of what we deeply care about. On the flip side, I also teach and facilitate conscious dance, and I kept seeing in those contexts that it was like there was something else to open in the conscious dance community and other dance communities, like yeah, what if we did make more money? What if we got paid to do what we loved? What if we were able to actually feel like we could have a bigger impact with the work that we were offering? Not just teaching weekly classes, although that can have a huge impact on a community, but also taking our work into other less conventional, less obvious spaces where people really need the work and don't necessarily even know that it exists. And so, if you will, the Corporate Dance Maven is an attempt to really pull forward or kind of weave forward that conversation and bring those two sides together, both by giving by giving information about what it can look like, but also by inspiring, igniting, and supporting you who are out there who kind of agree with this or think something about this is interesting to find ways to do this work yourself. So I am really excited about giving you some ideas today that might help you do the work yourself in your own context, or if you're already doing it, do the work more deeply. So today's webinar, Entering the Arena, 7 Proven Ways to Dance in the Door. I have a couple of goals today I'll share with you up front. One is really to give you a series of examples of how you can bring dance into the business context, either as an external service provider, meaning I'm a dance teacher, I want to come in and teach people how to dance or things about dance that will help them open in different ways, or as an internal trainer, I want to bring this in, maybe it's something that I love and I know how to do, but I haven't incorporated into my work, or I don't know how to do it, but I know other people who do, and I'd like to bring them in and like to build something around that. So I want to address a couple of things as I give you these examples. One, what is the translation or what's the approach? Like how do you even say why this would be useful? How is it relevant to the audience? What are the needs that they have that the thing that you want to create might serve? And also, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment, as we say in the business world, that they might get from doing this work with you? So I want to give some concrete examples that show you how you can think about that. So on the call today, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to talk you through some examples and describe each of these aspects of the example. I'm also going to provide some information near the end about the upcoming 6-week online course that I'm offering for folks who might want to go deeper into this work. And I'll offer an opportunity to enroll in that if that so piques your interest or is something that you would desire more support. And at the end, I'll also offer one more bonus strategy, or I'll offer the 8th proven way, if you will, to dance in the door, right before we wrap up. In addition to doing all these things, as I talk about these examples, I'm also going to mention the money. And there's a reason why I want to do that. It's quite edgy for me, in fact, to talk about, what I make doing the work that I do and how much one can make doing this work and how do you price these things. But I actually think it's a really touchy subject in our community. And I think it's useful to have ideas about what that can actually look like. So if you're an internal, it's useful to have a sense of what other companies are investing or willing to invest in doing this kind of work. Because if you're thinking, wow, I don't even know if, dance would be useful, if I know that another company is actually investing a certain number of dollars to do it, it's like, oh, that kind of helps me have a sense that there's value in this work. And on the flip side, if I'm external to an organization and I'm a dance teacher right now, and let's say I know how to charge, 20 or 30 or $50 for a class, but I don't have a concept of what I might charge for a full day or a half a day's worth of work in the corporate space, it's hard to get my head around what the potential is for changing both my lifestyle, my income, and all of those things. So I am going to be pretty transparent about when I talk about the different examples and the programs, at least the ones that are my programs, what I've charged for them, what I've been paid, just so you have a sense of what that can actually look like for yourself. So all in all, I'm actually really interested in doing what one of my teachers says, which is I kind of cut my fingers on the knives while trying to figure out how to sharpen them so that you don't have to. In other words, I didn't probably follow the straightest path to figure out how to do this work, but I'd really like to give you an idea of how to get there as quickly as you possibly can if it's something that you want to do. The other thing I want to mention, which is also something that one of my teachers in the business world talks about, is that when you think about doing work in, this is probably more so for external folks versus internal folks, but I'll say it anyway. If you think about entering the arena or getting involved in teaching dance in business, there are so many companies in the world, right? And so we think of Amazon and we think of Google, and not everyone's going to work at Google. So there are 500, obviously, Fortune 500 companies that kind of come to our mind right away. It's like, oh yeah, if I could do that. But actually, there are a lot more companies than that in the world, and many of them need different aspects of leadership development or wellness training or some of the different things that we can do with this work. There are actually 189 million small and medium-sized enterprises in the world. which is a lot. And many of them might be right in your backyard, right? It doesn't need to be a, that several thousand person company. 150, 200, 300 person company could be an interesting contract for you if you're interested in doing this work. And so just to say, there's probably a lot more opportunity than we're able to think about in an obvious way. And some of the examples I'm going to give are actually smaller businesses or the kind of organizations that I might not have thought would have hired me to do the work in the first place. So what I hope that you'll be left with is a little more clarity about how you can take a part of the work that you do as a dancer, either a lover of dance or a teacher of dance, and really bring it into your organization or a variety of organizations and genuinely meet the needs of the people around you. So here we go, 7 proven ways to dance in the door. The first way that I want to share is what I call conference weaving or energy breaks. And I really got interested in this particular way of operating. When I was living in the UK, I had a good friend who was a Nia technique instructor, and she had this crazy and surprising corporate contract with some of the big telecom companies in the UK. And she would go to their annual conferences, and she would literally 3 times a day get up and lead 5 to 10 minutes of movement. And so I've done some of that work recently myself. I participated in a conference for entrepreneurs called Inside Edge. The videos are available on YouTube to see what that looked like when I did that work, if that's something you're interested in. But essentially, my negotiation with them was this. I said, well, one, people get tired in the context of your workshops, your conference. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of energy. People are sitting all day long. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just get people up and get them moving? And, the organizer was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then I was able to say, and by the way, you have a theme to this conference. And when I teach something like Nia technique, I can actually kind of weave the theme of that particular, whatever's going on in the conference into what we're doing somatically. So the people not only get woken up, they get to have a sense of more energy in their bodies. They're not just falling asleep in their chairs while you're trying to teach whatever you're teaching on stage, but also they might kind of integrate it a little bit more fully into their system if I create movement that's related to the theme. And so conference weaving is a really interesting way, or energy breaks, as we sometimes say, is a really interesting way to make a first pitch to an organization. So for example, if you know that they have a sales conference that happens every year, or if there's an industry conference, in fact, where many of these different organizations might go, a way to weave in just a little bit of dance could be almost like a community building or energizing activity in the context of that program. Once you've done that, it's possible to have further conversations, right, and find other ways to do further work. But already just to say, look, I'm available as a person who can help ignite the room, who can help bring people together, who can help change the mood, who can help people not fall asleep in their chairs, is a great way to actually explore getting in the door in the first place. So conference weaving, energy breaks. To give a sense of like the price point for something like this, for example, I've been hired at anywhere from $200 to $500 a day to be present for an organization to do that kind of work. Sometimes if they have no precedent for it, you might start with either a free offer or a less expensive offer. But ongoingly, that's something where it's probably a lot more than you're going to make just teaching a one-off dance class. It's a possibility to be in the room, to be a contributor, but then also, by the way, you get to participate in the conference as well. So that would be number 1. Number 2, I'm going to call somatics spotlights. And this would be the situation where you might actually be part of a longer training program of some kind. So you're not the only thing on the menu, if you will, but perhaps they have, there's a regular training program that they're creating or that they're conducting, or there's another person who's offering a deeper dive. Let's say it's leadership, let's say it's communication, let's say it's any number of different things. And that your contribution would be to say, great, I actually see how adding some dance to that, not just as an energizer, but here as something that's actually relevant to whatever the content of the training would be, could enhance people's experience. So might help them to drop more deeply into presence in the context of that experience, or might help them feel what that's like in their bodies, right? So if, for example, the thing were more like a communication training, it might be that something about the way that you design your dance and the way that you offer the dance in the context of that actually supports what they're trying to learn from a communication perspective. So my version of this, when I actually worked at the boutique coaching and training firm, that I used to work for as an internal there, we would have corporate leaders come to us for anywhere from 3 to 5 day leadership training events. And in the context of those leadership training events, there were different things that we were working on. And one of the things that we worked on frequently was, how do you recenter from triggers? If something throws you off, how do you actually come back on balance? And the way that they particularly were addressing this topic in the context of that program was very intellectually. It was kind of like the cognitive behavioral therapy, think about what was the belief that you had, what was the thing that happened, what was the belief that you had, and then what was the behavior that you fell into as a result of that belief. But it was all much very mind oriented. And so what I realized for myself at that time was, I could actually bring a somatic practice into that conversation that was either based in dance or just based in simple body awareness, that would enhance the conversation by giving people a visceral and felt experience of that. And so I was able to actually communicate with the folks who were running the larger program and say, look, here's a way that we could bring in more embodiment by taking people through this, movement-based experience that gives them a sense of what that thing that you're already talking about and you're already teaching them is like in their body. And the business case there was really having an opportunity to go more deeply, again, into kind of walking the talk or sensing what it is that people might need. So whereas the first one, the conference weaving, it's like, your in is probably something like, people are falling asleep, they need more energy, I can help wake them up. In this context, it's a bit more like, you really want the thing that you're doing to stick, right? What if we could do something that would help people have a stronger physical or visceral sense of it, so that when they left the training program, it wasn't that typical scenario of, oh yeah, we learned some stuff, but we didn't really execute on it when we went home. It's like, oh, we learned some stuff, and I was able to get a sense of what that was like in my body, so that then when I went home, it really stuck with me, and I had a sense of how I might keep practicing that more ongoingly. In the context of that kind of work, I think, similarly kind of price point, if you're coming in and you're just adding something to someone else's program, you're really going to be considered part of their bench, essentially. So whether, like me, it was that this thing was already existing, I was already working for the company, and then I was just adding something in, or if it's, I have another collaborator who I think Corporate Dance Maven emailing list will get a video from Ren Lafitte, who's actually collaborating with another organization called Awake at Work. And in his case, they have an ongoing training program in mindfulness, and he's bringing in, an hour or a segment on embodiment in the context of mindfulness in particular. So depending upon the scenario, that kind of work would have you be essentially a bench to another program. If you're an internal and there's already an existing intact program, it might be that you negotiate a half an hour or an hour of time during that program that already exists to plug this new thing in. Or another version of how this can look would be that, it's a day-long program that you already have that exists, but you weave in 2 or 3 different shorter activities, maybe 15, 20-minute activities that happen just at the moment where there's a need to get people out of their heads and really deeply, viscerally experience whatever that thing is. I'm actually co-building a program with the folks at Logitech right now to specifically design embodied components for a leadership training they have for their people managers that currently exists. And so we're doing a bit more of that kind of work. So to give it a little bit of a ballpark, there's many ways to do this, so the price point can vary, but to give a bit of a ballpark, you might be looking at a couple $100s. So let's say $250 for a couple of hours, or maybe even an hour in some cases, of coming in and adding that work to an existing program. Keep in mind that whoever was initially paid for the work will then be paying you. So it's like a bench situation where they're giving you a part of their budget to bring this additional skill. If you're doing the work yourself, the fee could be something, again, because you're not there doing everything, but you're just offering bits and pieces. Maybe it's somewhere between like a couple $100s for an hour up to like $500 a day, again, would be a good price point for that kind of work. All right. So let's talk about number 3. So I'm going to call number 3 more like a collaborative keynote or a collaborative talk. So not long ago, I was actually invited by a client of mine who has no experience in embodiment, but knew that she'd had some great embodied experiences with me, to come to an organization that she was a part of and give a talk together. And part of how that unfolded was that she had had some breakthroughs that were a result of the physical movement experiences that she'd had with me. And so she was able to say, well, okay, cool. I want to talk to my audience about the ways that moving, being in touch with my body, connecting with the wisdom of my body through our work together has made a difference. Would you come and actually speak to the audience with me? And so some of that was actually, we got people moving a little bit, but it was also just an opportunity to actually use the experiences that she had had to highlight the evolution that she had gone through. And that was actually quite a cool way to get in the door. In this particular case, it wasn't that we went together to talk to an intact company. We actually did that as well. But the very first time, we went together to an industry event. So she brought me into a conversation with a whole lot of other people who had similar roles as hers at different organizations. And each of those people got to experience both me taking them through some of the activities that we'd done together, as well as her talking about her story and how those activities had made a difference for her. Those events can be from again, a price point or a how that can look and unfold perspective, anywhere from a free gig. In other words, cool, I'm a part of this community. We've had this experience together. So I'm thinking, right, you may have people who are your current dance students or people who've moved with you in different ways who also are members of different communities. And so would they be interested to talk about their experience of their revelations, their transformation, their process that has made a difference for them in who they are as leaders or who they are in their communities that has to do with their somatic experience or their embodied experience. Being able to actually talk about, have them talk about that to their audience and go with them and bring the activities themselves. If it's a local event, if it's something that's, for this 12 or 15 person women's group that I'm a part of, you might be looking at that being a free gig. But a gig that actually gets you some publicity and gets you in the door in a variety of other ways. The gig that I actually did was a New York Bankers Association Women's Conference. And so in the context of that work, it was a paid gig. It was about a $2,500 speaking engagement. And I was considered to be more one of the keynote speakers, and she was kind of plugging in as my co-person, although in actual fact, she had the connection there and she was the person who made the introduction and got me in the door to speak. So that was a great gig. It was one of the very first times that I was able to, having moved into starting my own business, get in front of a much bigger audience. And within the context of that work, rather than talk about it a lot and then do some movement, we actually started with movement. So within this hour, 15 minutes that we had, we got people up and moving right away. And then we sort of corkscrewed from there, like, wow, why did we do that? How is that relevant to being a woman in leadership? How does that actually make a difference for you? And she was able to share her stories, and I was able to share some of the philosophy behind the work that I do. All right, so that's 3. Let's get into some more juicy ones. So those are kind of initial, let's say, opportunities, ways to kind of get started, ways to do a little bit here and there. Once I got my feet wet doing some of those things, and I will say I'm going a bit in order of, how things have unfolded from easiest in little bits here and there to much bigger programs and longer term kinds of work. So another piece that I did was really what I would call a team building experience. And so this happened in the context of an executive team wanting to have something a little bit different at their leadership retreat, and specifically having a real desire that people get to know each other, that they build relationships more, that they break down some of their walls that they had in their collaboration and their communication. And what they saw was that I both had the skills of dance movement embodiment, but that I also had other skills that I was bringing to the party in terms of dialogue facilitation and leadership training as well. And so they hired me to conduct a two-day offsite for their leadership team. And in the context of that, our dialogue kind of went like this. So, why would you want to hire me, say, versus somebody else to do this work? And they said, well, look, we really do actually want to, again, walk our talk. We do want to get people out of their comfort zone in such a way. We want to change people's habits a little bit. We want to shake things up in a certain way. And we think that involving some embodied component could make a difference for that. This particular scenario wasn't me selling this cold. I had actually been working with, in a one-on-one way as a coach, a couple of the key players. So they'd had an experience of something embodied from me or with me. But ultimately, it happens to be the case that it's not uncommon that a leadership team who does a regular offsite or regular, say, yearly meeting might be looking for something different. So in my case, I was actually able to get hired to do the full event, with embodiment being, maybe 30% of that work. We did some dance and movement. We did some more sort of body-based centering practices in the context of that work. And then I also facilitated dialogue and helped them look at how the things we were doing from an embodied perspective made a difference for the team challenges that they were facing, and then dive more deeply into that. If it were somebody who I was working with who didn't have that background, the initial place that I would go would really be, would you like to hire somebody for a different team building experience? Would you like to deepen relationships? Would you like to actually get out of the comfort zone? Would you like to have an experience that brings you closer together such that by the end, whereas maybe at the beginning, you're having trouble in your relationships, you're not getting along all the time, maybe there's a lack of trust, such that by the end, you have a different experience of the way that you work together. You understand each other better, you feel closer, you've been through something together, and you have a stronger sense of trust with one another. So that's kind of what the ROI that they might be listening for would be like, oh, can you actually offer something to me or to us that would change the dynamic of our team by the end? Team building is a really interesting spectrum. So it's not uncommon, let's say, that a leadership team who has a regular offsite or regular yearly retreat or annual retreat might specifically just go, look, we want to pay for something, let's say, or choose something that is a couple hours, it's different, it's fun, and it brings us together. So like people will do cooking experiences, or they'll go whitewater rafting, or they'll do a ropes course. So you can kind of fit yourself into that bucket and say, great, I can offer a few hours of something that would be like that. What I sense, though, is that many of us want to take people like almost another layer deeper. And so the longer conversation, like the easier in is, I can be kind of a one-time deal that you bring me in and we have this fun experience and then ta-da, that was fun. But actually there's potential, I think, with the embodied work, at least in the work that I've done with folks, where it isn't just a fun thing to do together, but it really does very specifically craft and tailor the message of what we're doing or the experience of what we're doing in that process to help solve very specific things in terms of what they're wanting to cultivate as a team. And by the way, different than, say, a ropes course, you might be skilled as well at helping to articulate, great, now that we've done that, how do we in an embodied way take that forward? What would the practices look like? What are the ongoing things you can do as a team to continue to maintain that? So for example, when I work with the Strozzi Institute, we do somatic or embodied practices with a leadership team in the room, and then we encourage them to actually do those practices with one another at their weekly meetings or in moments when they might need to reconnect. So it can certainly be built that way. To give a sense for, again, folks who are more on the external as a price point for this kind of work, what I charged for this particular retreat that I have in mind was about $7,500 for 2 days worth of a retreat with a leadership team. This was a relatively small organization. A larger organization or an organization with a bigger budget, it could be all the way up to, I would say, double that. All right, a few more ideas. So number 5, let's call this women's leadership. And there's a whole lot of interest right now in women in leadership, and there's a whole lot of different things that are being offered in the corporate context for women in leadership. One of the things that's gotten some interesting attention there is leadership presence. Thank you, Amy Cuddy, for the power poses and for helping us get on the map as embodied teachers, whether we do something more complex or that simple. Actually, you do find that in the corporate women's leadership context, people have at least an inkling of the fact that something about what they're doing with their bodies may make a difference for how well they're able to lead or how much they're able to bring themselves forward in the context of their leadership. So I've sold a few different programs in the past year that were really specifically tailored towards supporting women in the leadership context to bring themselves forward. And the nice thing about that is, as people are already somewhat interested in presence and posture and the expression of being open physically or able to relay confidence physically, there's a lot that one can do with movement, with dance, with other kinds of somatics or embodiment that would feed into that or give people that experience. So a couple of things that I've done in the last year around this, I did a keynote talk on the topic and then eventually was able to sell a few different times a 3-part workshop series over about a couple of days which was an open enrollment program. And so the way that unfolded was that the organization had seen me speak. They'd kind of had an experience of me at least talking about the work and doing a tiny bit of the work. And they said, great, we really feel that our women leaders could benefit from more of these skills. We'd really like them to be able to come across more confidently. We'd really like them to be able to express themselves more fully. Will you come in and actually do this work? The program that I sold, I think what we billed for it was around $4,000 for about a day and a half worth of work spread out over several days. And I've done that work either in 3 parts, so maybe like once a month, 1, 2, and 3. I've also done that work where it was a traveling gig where I went somewhere and we did the 3 workshops kind of back to back, but that each of the different workshops had a different component. And the nice thing about that is whatever you choose as your 1, 2, 3, or 5 components, they really can be the things that you as a movement instructor feel most strong, or most confident, or most passionate about teaching, that could help open one's leadership. So there's not a particular way to do this one right or wrong, but know that there really is a desire in the corporate context in particular to helping women leaders come forward. And there's not a lot of clarity about what does it actually take? There's a lot of clarity about what's in the way. But when we get into things like executive presence, it's kind of an undefined thing. When we get into things like promotability, it's it's a little hard to put my finger on exactly what it is. And so some of what people are needing and wanting to cultivate are the more subtle things that do get opened up through movement, right? That do actually get ignited when we're more aware of the presence that we have or the ways that we are in our bodies. And so it's been commonly the case that I've coached people on that kind of stuff. And so it was a pretty easy transition from thinking about what that looks like all the way to designing a program that involved embodied activities or dance and movement to bring that forward. By the way, dance for a women's program can be fun and edgy for different reasons. So you'll have all the way the spectrum, right? From women who are like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you got me dancing. I haven't done that since I was a kid. I miss that. And there's a lot of excitement about it and sort of passion, wow, I didn't realize I'd forgotten that part of myself. So it can create this whole kind of bubbly, exciting experience for people. And then on the flip side, it's wow, that's not what I thought we were going to do at our leadership training days. So it's really important to, if you're going to take people in right away, capitalize on the ones who are thrilled, and then also connect with and touch in with the ones who are either more confronted, and also do some relevancy building. So be prepared to come with a bit of science, or bring Amy Cuddy's video as well, or be able to talk about why we would bother actually doing these things with our body if the topic is leadership, but then we're also doing movement. That's really important. So, I'll add this just as another alternative here, right? So women's leadership being the angle, a couple of, sort of 3-part workshop series being one version of how that can look. I'm actually teaching a 6-month cohort program at another organization where some of the work is virtual and some of the work is in person. And it's specifically designed for a cohort of 12 higher level women leaders. And there's quite a bit of embodiment work in that, including bringing people back into dance and other forms of movement for the sake of well-being, but also for the sake of enhancing their leadership. And the price point for that work has been around $25,000 for the context of a 6-month training program. So lots of possibilities. I'll give you 2 more quickly. So number 6, I call a values launch. And it's kind of one of my top secret weapons, but I feel compelled to give it away to you nonetheless. One of the first things that I got hired to do, and somewhat spontaneously actually, although I was really thinking about this idea of walking the talk. And where in our organizations are we not walking the talk? Well, it's often, the values that we have as an organization that are kind of written on the wall that everybody believes in, but, it comes right down to it. It's not actually what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And so from a pain point perspective, or a thing that organizations are wanting that they're not quite getting, it's how do we get people to really live the values on a day-to-day basis? And so I was hired to do a program with an organization where they had just defined a whole new set of values. In fact, the truth is that they were really bringing forward older values that they'd had. It wasn't like they totally changed their minds, although that's not uncommon in an organization. If we didn't have values, or we've rebranded and therefore we're realigning our values, or we had these old values, but we've decided we want to have a new face of the company. So the rebranding and then redefining of values context in an organization can often lead to a really juicy conversation about, great, what's next? And what's next is we want people to walk the talk. And something embodied, either using dance in a variety of ways to get people into their bodies to feel what each of those values are like, or giving people an opportunity to actually interact with each other, say from a partner dance perspective or a different kind of collective movement experience perspective, and having them locate where those values are in their body can be a really interesting way to not just have it be an intellectual exercise, but something that people can drop into more deeply and then take away when they go back to work. And so the organization that I worked with felt really strongly that the part of the problem that they had in the organization was that they had these great values, but that people were often falling off the bike, or what they would say breaching the values, rather than living those values in any given moment. And so they really wanted to see that people would have a visceral experience of living them and maybe get through some of the blocks that they had to living them in the room in this launch event that they wanted to hold. So they brought me in to co-host, along with the CEO, a 3-hour launch event. It was actually a company-wide event. And the way that it unfolded was the CEO kind of talked about the values and did the launch piece, and then handed off to me to take people through a couple of hours of pretty deep dive dance, movement, and somatic experiences that were oriented around each of the values that they wanted to bring forward. And we really hit hard, specifically the ones that were a little harder for people in the organization. That program itself, that several hours worth of work, plus the prep for that work, because it was all custom built, and then the follow-up from that work, we billed at about $4,000. It took me about a month and a half, 2 months to really put the whole thing together and deliver it to them. It also led to further work. In their case, we did develop from there a series of other training programs. So it was one of those kind of get you in the door, and then, wow, that worked, let's see what else we can do using those same techniques to deepen people into this more fully and help it become sustainable. And number 7 might be one of the more obvious ones. So I've been talking a lot in the realm of team building, teaming, leadership, values. Wellness is another really great place that you can imagine bringing dance into business. And so that can look a variety of different ways. One of the things that I've done recently is what I would call a next tier wellness program. So we were really working with resilience. The company essentially said to me initially, look, I know you do things that have to do with the body and movement and well-being. We feel like we have a wellness program right now. It's not working that well. Would you be willing to come in and help us to rebuild the wellness program that we have, such that people were actually living it more on a day-to-day basis? So again, this kind of common theme of, are we really doing what we say we want to do? Are we really living it? And so we built, again, a 6-month program that was designed to take people into a sense of physical resilience or well-being, as well as mental and emotional resilience. The desire they had was to increase employee engagement, to reduce turnover, and to see some changes in their current wellness metrics that weren't actually looking so good. In our case, we actually we did a pilot that the intention is then to unfold out into several other programs. So we chose a cohort of people who we thought could really dive in and practice these things that we were doing together. And we were able to execute. So it was a cohort of about 30 people that were like the early adopters, if you will. And we ran that over the course of 6 months. And so in the context of that, each time we would get together, they were day long, one day over the course of one day each month over the course of 6 months. And each time we would get together, we would start with movement. The very beginning of the program, we talked a lot about the benefits of movement, how getting into one's body, just from a physical health and well-being, but also from a reduction of stress perspective, makes a difference. So we were able to get them not just talking about it, but learning some of the context on it, and then actually really being able to dive in and have those physical movement-based experiences and reflect on, well, what is different for me from an energy level perspective when I'm doing this more? So with that homework, we would always do some movement in the room. We would move together, we would reflect on the movement, and then we gave them a lot of homework or home play, created some actually specific movement videos that were related to the work that we had done together in the room, so that they could actually practice at home or practice with their kids or practice with their spouses. And that became something that then was an underlying thread. Then when we got into the realms of mental and emotional resilience, we also did more embodied practices that helped them to work with calming their minds through movement meditation, as well as working again on recentering from triggers through embodied or physical practices. And tracking emotions through their bodies was something as well. This was actually at a manufacturing company, so it wasn't the kind of organization where you'd expect a lot of like very high level consciousness. It was pretty much a group of folks who were your average everyday people off the street, but really interested in having a different experience of their wellness and well-being. So that was a mouthful. I hope that these examples have been helpful. I hope that you've gotten some ideas from this. If you're on the line and you have comments or reactions, I'd love to see them or hear them. So feel free to chat anything that comes up for you around that. And while you are, while you're doing that, I know sometimes it takes a chat a little while to come through. I'm going to just start sharing a few things with you about some possible next steps if you want to go deeper in this work. So my intention again here was to give you lots of ideas of how you might start to think about how you could frame this work for yourself if you'd like to be doing this work. If you're one of those people who feels like, I'd like to be doing that work, but I could use some help, that I totally understand. I've really gotten a lot of help along the way. I've worked with a variety of different business mentors. I've tried things out. I've crashed on my head. I've worked with folks who have a lot of somatics experience to help me think about the translation. So if it feels like a lot and kind of overwhelming or just a lot and you're excited and you want to get some support to move more quickly, I'd really love to support you. And in service of that intention, I'd like to invite you, if you're interested, to join our upcoming 6-week Teaching Dance and Business online course. And so in the course, there's a couple of intentions I have and things that we'll do. So in the course, we'll actually help you very specifically figure out what kind of program might be best for you to teach, given your unique skills, talents, values, and superpowers. Also understand the right decision makers to talk to and how to talk to them in order to get your program off the ground, which would be relevant either whether you're an internal or an external service provider. We'll help you figure out how to tailor the language that you're using to talk about the work that you're doing, both in the sales process and also in the delivery process, to really suit your audience to a T, to make sure that what you're bringing lands. We'll also help you figure out how to build the right length, bite-sized program that you can replicate again and again, and also that could help get you in the door to do longer programs if you want to. We will also help you figure out how to back your curriculum and your program with some cutting-edge science and also measure the ROI, or the return on investment, of your program so that you can communicate it back to your stakeholders in the company you're serving or to future potential clients. The course, it's going to actually run for 6 weeks, as I said. It'll be, the live course will be from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays, starting next Thursday, August 18th. And all the calls will be recorded, so if you can't make one, that is okay. And in terms of the cost and value of the course, I've spent about the last 10 years gathering all of the different pieces of this puzzle. I've done a lot of courses and programs, if you will, that were not quite right fit to really get down to the nuggets of what is most relevant for this audience, for this kind of training. So I don't honestly know how to put a value price tag on that. I've certainly spent probably a good $20,000 to $30,000 in the last 2 years just getting the business support to do it myself. So people often say, oh, the value of this course is ... I'm not even going to say that, but I wanted to price it at a point that was really reasonable and possible for folks who do currently run businesses teaching dance or who are in the corporate space and just want to get a little extra retooling. So the investment for the course is $675. And if you sign up in the next 24 hours, I'm offering $100 off of that, which would make your investment $575. So if that is something that you would like to do or something that you are interested in, I'm actually going to go ahead and put up some information on the screen. Hopefully you can see it. So launch your next program in 60 days. The intention of this course is that by the end of the 6-week course, and within a couple of weeks, you'd really be able to have your first offer done. You'd already be making offers to the folks in the corporate space you'd like to be making offers to, again, internally or externally, and that you would be feeling much more confident that you can and will do this work, and ideally already starting to get paid for it. So my intention is that it's detailed, it's precise, and it's coherent and complete enough that you'd likely be able to make the investment back pretty quickly. In addition, so if you're interested, again, you can click the button. You're welcome to reach out to sign up today or in the next 24 hours. I also want to offer, while we're here, a bonus. So for the first 20 people who register for the course, I created an A to Z template which talks you through how to vision and build your dance business, your dance in business offer from scratch. And the template, frankly, is probably worth the price of admission to the course. It really is everything you need to know, think through, figure out, work out in order to actually be able to execute the offer that you want to make, and also who you need to address and how you can approach it. So you would get that before the course started so that you can start filling it out, figure out where your gaps are. And then when we went into the course itself, we'd actually take you more deeply into each of those pieces. So you'd be able to actually get the support, ask the questions, and get the help you need to do it. So that's my offer. I would love for you to join me. If you're thinking about it and you have questions, feel free to reach out by email. If you're like, yes, I want to do it, there's a button right there. You're welcome to click and sign up. I'll make sure that you also get some more information in the next couple of days as well. I am excited to support you. I know that you can do this work, and I also want you to know that you don't have to do this work alone. It's been a long journey for me to figure it all out. I'm still figuring it out. I'm sure that if we do collaborate, I'm going to learn things from you as well. I definitely had done a lot of trial and error, and frankly, I'd like to make things a little more easy on you because I think this movement is important, and I'd like to see it move forward much more quickly than it is right now. So I would be delighted to have been the person who had to fall on my face a bit to help make life more easy for you, if that appeals. So once again, the course is happening for 6 weeks, starting next Thursday, the 18th, happening at 4 p.m. Eastern. And by the end of the course, if it's something that you decided to do, you'd be really ready to launch or have already launched your first or next corporate dance program. By the way, I'm also offering a money-back guarantee on the course. So if you're not satisfied and it doesn't work for you, I will give you your money back. If you can see the offer and you're interested, click to register. And as promised, I do want to wrap up, like I said, with one more strategy, one more way to get in the door, and also one little piece of food for thought. So the piece of food for thought I'll offer first, which is that we are a growing tribe, and I'm excited to see what unfolds for us. I have a really strong feeling that no matter what you do, if you take what you heard today and you go do your own thing, if you take what you heard today and you just tell somebody else, if you dive in and join the course, if you keep in touch with me and we collaborate on something in the future, whatever happens, that the folks who are interested in this movement are really people who are wanting to and are going to change the world. And I was thinking about that, and I remembered the Margaret Mead quote that many of us probably love and use often, and it's a bit cliche, but gosh, it's so important. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. By Margaret Mead. And I think that those of us who are interested in teaching dance and business together can create really interesting and fun changes in the world that we live in today. One more thought to leave you with. There's one more way that I have taught dance and business, and it's really the obvious one, but it's also a really fun and interesting and potentially first place to start, which is just teach dance. So one of my very first gigs teaching dance and business was for Amex in the UK. And several of us NIA Technique instructors were hired to come in and teach a 1-hour movement class once or twice a week. And the company had made that available as an additional service to their employees. It was really in the realm of fitness, wellness and well-being, but specifically physical fitness. And I think we were paid about $50 a session, or 50 pounds a session, it may have been, since it was in the UK. So it could be somewhere again between sort of 20, 30. It's going to be probably more in the range of $50, even $100, depending upon where you're living, for one hour corporate class. And if you feel like all of this extra stuff about leadership and wellness and women's work and all of these other things, team building, collaboration, feel like too big of a bite to take for yourself, there's always the possibility of simply reaching out to a local organization and saying, look, I can offer you, for the fitness and well-being of your employees, a 1-hour class this week. I'm happy to do a few for free and see if they like it, see if there's interest, and then I'm happy to come back at this rate if that's interesting. And certainly there'll be some organizations who already have a precedent of that, where you might get on a list of preferred vendors or a list of folks who are ongoingly offering, like if they already have yoga, a dance offer, or another somatic or movement offer, could be an easy in. And if they don't, it can be the thing that you start or the thing that you ignite. The sort of large version of what that can look like, right? Anna Botello has been the director of dance at Google. And she was an internal who said, look, I think that dance is actually something we could add to our curriculum here, the things that we offer, just as an extra benefit for our employees. And, someone in the fitness realm, although not all of it in the fitness realm. And so she started with a few classes here and there and has built a bit of an empire of all many different kinds of dance, serving many different kinds of stakeholders, from Bollywood to Zumba, to modern or technical dance in the context of the Google environment. And so there are certainly companies who know that those things are happening at places like Google and who would be thrilled to have some version of that for their employees if it weren't a difficult thing to say yes to. And so at very least, I invite you to play with or consider the idea of reaching out and making that kind of an offer. And I have seen, in fact, that those kinds of really simple offers can lead to or can unfold into more exploratory workshop kind of work or leadership training kind of work, or, great, you do that. Now would you come to our conference and speak, or would you come to our conference and lead energy breaks? So that can sometimes be a nice way to just get in the door in the first place, doing exactly what you do, get a sense of who the stakeholders are, get the lay of the land, and then imagine and envision from there what else you might offer. So on that note, I've had a lovely time getting to know you all. Again, I don't know, let's see, I'm looking at questions here. I don't know how, I don't know if everybody's questions have come through. I see little bits and pieces. I see some questions on the price point for wellness. Thank you for asking that, Kim. That was a $35,000 contract over 6 months. And the agreement that I had with the organization is that I was delivering it for them, training up their internal folks to then deliver it later. So that was one of the bigger contracts that I've done this past year. Yeah, I don't have more that I want to say. Hopefully that was a good download. Please keep in touch. If you're interested in the program, like I said, there's a link hopefully still available. I'm not great with tech, but I think it's still showing on your screen, so feel free to click there. I'll also send you a bit more information and details, a summary of what I said today and a few more things. And if you'd like to take advantage of the discount, reach out in the next 24 hours and let me know that you're interested, or go ahead and just sign up. And if you don't care about the discount, you have until next week to decide. And I really look forward to getting to know you all. If there's other things you want me to know about you, or things you want to communicate or express, or questions you have, please feel free to email me those things as well. Have an awesome rest of your day, and good luck with whatever you are doing out there in the world right now.